Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Deku become a magician part 3. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video and also share this video with your friends. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. Izuku immediately regretted telling his mother about his first day of high school. Everything was going great. He talked about his classmates, his teacher, and her just nodding while standing over a pot. Then he told her about the orientation, about the changes to the school, and why. So we were sitting in the auditorium when the principal showed a video to the class. He said, petering off, hoping she doesn't pick up on it. "Oh really sweetie, already showing old videos in class instead of teaching, well that's high school for you," she chirped. High school is a wonderful time, when teenagers are filled with raging hormones, peer pressure is abounding, and the underpaid teachers just want to drink themselves under the desk to get through the day. What was it about, the solar system or maybe a nature documentary? Damn it, she noticed. Clearing his throat, he spoke softly so she might not hear it. So, remember about 10 months ago, there was that incident with the sludge villain. He could hear him slow down her stirring, she wouldn't ever forget the day her son nearly died. Well, as it turns out there was a camera that caught the whole thing, and the principal saw it and then decided to show it to everyone. Inko knew now was the time to get more involved in the discussion, turning the stove to a low simmer, she wiped her hands and walked over to her son. Sitting down across from him, she grabbed his hands and stared into his eyes with a concerned look. "Did it remind you and scare you a bit?" Izuku, maintaining eye contact, quickly shook his head. "No, it didn't scare me," Kachin was angry, "but I think it scared a lot of the classmates and my two new friends, Momo-chan and Itsuka-chan." As he continued on about how it wasn't fair that his actions caused them such worry, or how he needs to think of a proper way to apologize, he missed the most important factor. He had just stated that he had two new friends, but he referred to both of them as Chan. Inko knew this day would come. Her baby boy has more friends. When he finally brings himself back, he realizes that his mother is beaming. "Mom, what's wrong?" Grasping him into a hug, "Oh my baby has friends, tell me what those two boys like are," she rambled. "Do they treat you nicer than Katsuki-chan? He's a good boy at heart, but he's so rough with you." "Well, they are both really smart, they like to tease me, but in a fun way." Izuku began, "They both are really pretty." At this point Inko was very confused, she had seen Izuku's browser history, she knows he's straight. So why would he refer to boys as pretty, unless… Izuku again missed a warning sign, his mother was now sporting the largest grin that could fit on her face. Her baby boy, her little man, had two girlfriends. She began shaking in her chair, so much that it rattled, this couldn't be missed by Izuku. "Mom." It was too late. "My baby has girlfriends." The shriek could be heard for miles. Oh no. Izuku finally understood the hell he unleashed upon himself. He just told his mother he had two girls that were his friends, and he thought they were cute. He had to act fast. "Mom, they aren't my girlfriends." Haha, situation expertly defused. He smiled smugly. "Of course not sweetie, they aren't yet, and if I have anything to say they won't be the last." "Yeah, they won't be the last. Wait, what?" He panicked. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Of course we'll start you off with two girls, then we can work on wrangling more girls for you sweetie," her eyes glistening with intent. "You'll get all the girls knocking down your door with mommy's help. This is getting out of hand fast, so I have to use my last resort. I heard Yagi-sensei mumble something about asking you out last week. Sorry All Might, it was you or me. Forgive me." This worked to get Inko to stop her machinations, to have her son acquire a harem of young women. "Mom please, they are just friends." We all agreed that it's too early to start a relationship since school just began, and honestly, how many women could I possibly entertain in that manner? I think two would be the most. Plus I don't even know how to get girls to like me that way. He spat out his response fast enough so his mother couldn't get a word in to disrupt him. In a huff, "Fine, I won't work my magic to make you the daddy those girls would want." Izuku is burying his face in his hands, he doesn't need to hear how his mom wants him to hook up with a bunch of girls. "But, I will not allow you to be at that school without a means to win a girl's heart, and since tonight is the last night I get you consistently, I'm going to crash course you through it." "What do you mean, last night?" he air quoted. "Oh, did I forget to tell you, I signed the form to allow you to live at the school's dormitories," she answered. "Isn't that great, you get to live at the school?" "That's awesome." Izuku began thinking of all the ways he could use the facilities there to practice, access to so many resources he wouldn't normally have. On top of some independence from his mother, a chance to show her that he's growing up. "But what do you mean crash course?" It was 6 hours later, when Inko let her son go to bed, he had recipes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner memorized, which was the easy part. Then how to be a proper gentleman, topped off with a talk. Izuku's only savings grace was that Inko had spent the day packing up his stuff for him, so he just had to get to school, which they had cancelled the first half of classes, to give the students a chance to get their rooms set up and familiarize themselves with the building. Izuku made sure to arrive bright and early. When he got to the school, he noticed most of the students had boxes, bags, and other methods to bring in their belongings. Since the school provided most of the furniture, no one needed to bring their own, unless they wanted to. Izuku took in, there were quite a few. Kachin wasn't one of them though. He did see Momo-chan and Itsuka-chan chatting with each other. Taking in the rest, a girl with a round face and brown, bob-like hair had quite a few boxes, leading him to question how she was going to carry them all up. A few more people, it seemed like there were around 20 or so, since the Hero Corps students would all be in the same dorm room. Once Izuku saw it, I was in awe. It was bigger than any hotel he had seen. It was easily 7 stories, could probably house at least 60 people easily. Even though there were only 2 hero courses, it seems like they planned in case they added a third. Izawa-sensei was there to greet them, somehow looking even more tired. Must not be a morning person. Good morning students, I am Izawa Shouda. I am the homeroom teacher for 1A, and because I apparently keep making losing bets with my coworkers, I have the privilege of being here so early to make sure you can get situated into your new rooms. He lazily gestured to the large building. This is where you will be staying. Curfew is at 10 p.m. unless you get permission. Breakfast and lunch will be served in the cafeteria if you so wish to eat there. Dinner is on the rest of you to figure out. Leave all antics and problems until after classes are over so that none of you are my problem anymore. This got a few chuckles from some and worried glances from others. Some had a better understanding of his darker humor than others. Since morning classes are cancelled, you will have 1 class today, and that will be Foundational Hero Studies, so be at test site Gamma by 2 p.m, he grunted out. I'm going back to sleep. As he shuffled off, leaving the other students a tad confused on what to do as he left them at the door. When they walked in, they saw a very large and spacious common room with an equally large dining room and kitchen ensemble which stood bare but had large refrigerators, freezers, and 3 stove oven combos, 4 microwaves. They obviously built this to handle having a few dozen teenagers in the building. There was also a large stack of papers sitting on one of the coffee tables. After distributing them, it was a map of the building. Boys and girls' sleeping quarters were separated, including a laundry room for clothes and study rooms that seemed soundproof for use. The dorms had separate bathrooms which looked large enough to fit a sauna in them, which they did have. After noting down the rooms, the students were left with the idea of where their rooms were assigned to them. Izuku watched as most of the people just walked over to start unpacking. He noticed the brunette from earlier had just picked up the mountain of boxes and was carrying it. He didn't notice any strain from her, but she looked a little green in the face, so he noted she was either really strong or she did something to the boxes. Momo and Itsuka finally took notice of the green-haired boy and came over. Midoriya-kun, did you forget to bring your belongings with you? Momo questioned first. Yeah, or are you one of those minimalists? Kendo inquired. Realizing why it was confusing, everyone else seemed to have at least 5 boxes worth of stuff, and all Izuku had was the clothes he was wearing and his All Might cap on. Right, oh sorry, he began apologizing, it's actually all in here. Taking off his hat and presenting it as if that was the answer provided any clarity. No offense Izuku, but I saw your quirk at the entrance exam. It's something like telekinesis, Itsuka asked. So, I don't get how you would fit more stuff in a hat. What would that even be? Extra-dimensional space, Yaoyorozu answered. Do you have multiple quirks, Midoriya-kun? People with multiple quirks were incredibly rare. Some had a quirk that did 2 things, but they were somewhat related. Todoroki was one, but it governed thermal regulation, so it was still a single quirk. Telekinesis and extra-dimensional space were 2 very different quirks. Nope, he gave a quick reply, grinning like an idiot the whole time. Don't even really have one, if you want to be technical about it, but don't worry, I got everything I need. Come by my room after you get set up, and I can demonstrate a few things for you, Yaoyorozu-chan, since you didn't see me during the entrance exam. Izuku offered. You are also more than welcome to come to Kendo-chan, since you had some questions too. He gave a soft smile to them, causing them to blush lightly. Why yeah, I'd like Momo to respond. And me too, I want to see more tricks you got. Itsuka answered. Great, after that I can make us some lunch if you want. Izuku smiled brighter. Since we are going to be living on our own, I figured I should get practice in on being more independent, so I need to practice making meals, especially if dinner is going to be left up to ourselves. Don't want to just eat frozen or microwave meals. Least not with the diet I'm on. His forethought caught them off guard again. It did slip their minds that they would be making their own meals at least once a day, and they didn't know how reliable the other students would be, except maybe that one boy with the large lips, Bakito, who got really excited about how much baking he would be able to do with such a well-stocked kitchen. We'd love to, Midoriya-kun, Kendo replied. Momo nodded with her. It sounds wonderful, especially if you are as good a cook as I hope you are. Winking causes Izuku to blush with him. They quickly parted ways, and when the two ladies made it to their side, they realized they were also flatmates, having adjacent rooms. It only took them a while to unpack. Momo had made a system of it, and Kendo had no problem sorting out what she needed the most, since they would have plenty of time after class to finish up. They both headed over to see Izuku's room, wondering how he was going to decorate without anything to decorate with. Surprising both of them, when they got to his room they saw as he was pulling his entire arm out of his hat and had a box that seemed much too big to fit into the brim of the cap he had along with it. Noticing the two ladies, he set down the box. Wow, you two were fast, just that organized, or am I that slow? He chuckled. For some reason he felt at ease around the two girls, so his more nervous nature took a back seat so he could have real conversations with them. So, you do have two quirks. Kendo amazed me. That's incredible, and so amazingly useful, no wonder you topped the class. I don't see how anyone could have been ready for you to do so much in such a short amount of time. Momo said, but all you did was get your boxes out. How are you going to unpack? Don't worry, I saw this in a movie once. He pulled his head inside out, making it a tall blue wizard's cap with stars and moons on it. Pulling up his sleeves, he readied his hands with some shaking. It earned some giggles from the girls until the objects in his box started to dance and marched their way on shelves. This was an amazing show that had the girls wide-eyed as he unpacked in under a minute. Throwing both of his hands into the air a few times, and everything stopped moving. Had to do that, otherwise it would have just kept going, that would have been a mess. That was amazing. Midoriya-kun. Momo stammered out. She had never seen such a display of control before, and to add it all into what seemed like a performance only made it that much more impressive. Kendo started clapping with her giant hands. Holy cow, I knew you could get into it when you were at the entrance exam, but to still put on a show for us now. You're definitely a keeper. Bound to his enraptured audience of two, thank you so much, I enjoy putting smiles on people's faces. Especially your two beautiful faces. What are you flirting with now? Is it just when I perform or something? This comment made the two girls blush, but since I took you to see a show, let me treat you two to lunch, and I'll call this date a success. Brain no, what is going on with you? Both girls were turning a deep shade of crimson at his very smooth words, but they couldn't find a response. They did go into a boy's room and see a show. Now it seemed like they just need a meal, and it would be a date, in a different order, but one nonetheless. So, they all silently made their way to the dining room, unaware that they had been watched from the hall of one of the rooms further down. So, that's how it is, day one, and he already has his floozies into his room. From the sounds coming from the mophead's room they got a little friendly. This is perfect. He slowly shut his door and finished his assignment in the meantime. As the two girls whispered to each other about Izuku, he was quickly fluttering about the kitchen, preparing a large meal for the three of them. The curried rice will be great as a light lunch for them, not heavy on carbs, plenty of fat, and protein for energy, so they won't feel bloated during the class which Izuku had managed to weasel out of Yagi-sensei. That was the class he would be teaching. So, he didn't want to weigh them down with something that would leave them feeling awful later. The smell of his food, however, was permeating itself through the building's ventilation, and when he set some pots to simmer, he came back to find that more than just the two girls had come wanting a meal. This gave him a chance to look over some of the others in the dorm. The round-haired girl had joined them, Uraraka-san, since he remembered her from class, in fact a few of the faces he recognized. Sato, Shoji, Jiro, Hagakure, Kirishima, Kaminari, Tokoyami. Then there were some others he didn't recognize, so they must have been from the 1B course, whose names he wasn't aware of yet. So, what's going on, and what is that amazing smell? Uraraka asked. Well, Midoriya-kun has graciously offered to make us lunch, Yaoyorozu answered. This caused some of the students to be confused, others got jealous. At this point Kendo decided to interject. Because if you forgot, Aizawa-sensei said that only breakfast and lunch are provided by the school, dinner is our responsibility, and some of us are on diets, or just don't want to eat frozen meals all the time. So Midoriya-kun wants to make sure, not just his hero skills are kept sharp, but that he can also be a more independent person, since we have all somewhat moved out. At this Izuku began blushing and stammering once all eyes were on him. Some of them realized that they would need to cook for themselves, or that Izuku was already wooing two girls with his skills. That's wonderful, cheered Hagakure. An excellent use of time and resources to recognize the responsibilities one would undertake being in this new environment, nodded Tokoyami. A few grunts and grumbles as some people realized they had to take on added responsibilities and wondered if that was one of the reasons some of their parents agreed to them being housed in the dorm. So, on that, I don't think they are going to have staff cleaning the dorms either, so I wouldn't put it past the school to leave it up to us to keep the building clean. Momo capped off the explanation for the class. So, a way to distribute chores will need to be devised so that this place doesn't become a pigsty. This got groans from pretty much everyone, aside from those who were used to handling household chores or didn't consider it a punishment to keep a tidy home. Anyway, Kendo-chan, Yaoyorozu-chan and the curry will be done soon, so I hope you enjoy it. Izuku chose to block out the stares he was getting from some others. He didn't want to try to dissect what those looks could mean. Thanks, Midoriya-kun, a reply in stereo came his way. Flushing his face again, he retreated to the kitchen to protect whatever shred of dignity he might still have. It wasn't good that both of the girls seemed able to get under his skin like that, less so they could do it in front of everyone without a second of hesitation. Most of the boys had already left to go to the cafeteria. The girls and some of the boys decided to stay behind and chat with each other. While Izuku was in the kitchen outside the earshot of the group, the conversation shifted to him very quickly. So, you three. What's up with that? Asked Jiro. Whatever do you mean? Kendo asked innocently. Tokoyami answered, well, when I first saw you, Midoriya-san did an expert job at calming your nerves, and the way he held your hand Yaoyorozu-san during that horrific video yesterday, it seems you three have something going on. Yeah, came a voice from a short blonde girl with bull horns, it seems like he is your boy toy. At this both Itsuka and Momo turned bright red. It's not like that. We're waiting. Spat out Momo. Unaware that meant different things to everyone else. As the door opened to the kitchen, Izuku came out expertly carrying the plates of food on his arm. For the lovely ladies. Placing them down in one fluid motion. Glancing that people were still there, he blushed, having an audience for his flirting. No, don't mind us. Kirishima, Shoji, and Jiro started pushing people out of the dining room. Oh come on, it was just getting good. Uraraka whined. Yeah, at least wait until they start the fun, from a green-haired girl. Nope, this is definitely not something we were invited to. A short, sky blue-haired boy added. The group disbanded. At least they could have some juicy gossip for the rest of the classes. Because of the interruption, it didn't occur to the two girls to correct Momo's statement to the others. So, they quietly ate the food. Which they both felt it was the best curry they have ever had, without paying for. Conversation shifted to learning about each other's home life. And since my parents are wealthy, it took a lot of convincing to get them to let me attend the dorms. They didn't mind having a limousine for me every day, but I told them it would be good to get better at social interactions with my classmates, and that it would look bad if it was known that I had them wasting gasoline to drive me to and fro every day. Momo finished her story, leaving them both flabbergasted. Not only was she beautiful and smart, but she was the heiress to one of the largest companies in Japan, a giant corporation that supplied most of the support equipment that heroes used in the region. So, what if you want to be a hero instead of joining the support course, if you don't mind me asking? Kendo asked. Not at all, it seems obvious that someone with a quirk like mine would join the support course, since I can make just about anything, as long as I know what it's made of, but… She trailed off. I just want to be more than that. Everyone kept saying how good my quirk would be for the company, and that made me feel like my future was decided for me. That I didn't have a choice in who I would get to be. So, I feel a little self-conscious about my decisions, if it's the right path for me, so I hope the hero course can help me with that. Izuku, ever aware when someone needed emotional support, gripped Momo's hand in his. It's okay, that's a wonderful goal, Yaoyorozu-chan. Most people don't know what they want to do in life, at least you are smart enough to admit it, that's courage. I learned from someone that the successful people are those that can admit their faults and work to better themselves. He gave her a gentle squeeze, an equally gentle smile, so no matter what you choose, I'll be there to help and support you as much as you need so you can be the best hero you want to be. Same for you, Kendo-chan. His desire to help others, even through words, was enough to bring Momo to tears. Thank you, Midoriya-kun, it really makes me feel good that I have this much support for my decision. Wiping away the tears. So now I'm even more interested in your story. What makes Midoriya-kun the sweet and caring man he is? Well, it's not that impressive, at least compared to you two. Rubbing the back of his neck. Well, my quirk didn't develop until I was 12, so I got picked on a lot in school. This information shocked them both. Quirks developing late wasn't unheard of. But 12 was so far on the extreme that he may have set a record for a natural development. Some people's quirks came later, but they always had them and knew it, just the trigger for them didn't come until later. Surely the teachers put a stop to it, Kendo interjected. Momo nodded. Both had attended very different schools, but both also had strict anti-bullying policies. Well, not really, since everyone thought I was quirkless. They kind of didn't care what I did half the time or what others did to me. So a few other students of different grades would practice their quirks on me at times. What? Momo shrieked. How could the teachers just let that happen? It's against the law to use quirks without a license, let alone on another person. Frankly, the fact they would choose the easiest target is the most horrendous part of it. Yeah, that's no better than villains, Kendo added, her hands turning giant in her frustration. I mean, how can people think it's okay, and for the teacher to just ignore it? That's disgusting. Hope I never meet any of those people, or they better hope they don't meet me, she said, punching her hand. Well, Izuku droned out. There is one here at the school. What? Both girls freaked out even further. How could someone like that get into this school? You would think it would screen them out for bad behavior from their middle school records, Momo stated. Well, again he began, since the teachers never felt it needed to report unless it was more dangerous than they could cover up with a few bandages, which was just usually put down as roughhousing or something else, so they didn't have any government types breathing down their necks. Izuku's eardrums were beginning to hurt as the two girls began shouting about the legality of the situation or various threats to faceless people. If they ever met, they alternated the comments, so it was at least refreshing to hear some colorful language. But Kachin really calmed down over the years. I mean, even though he beat and burned me leaving me in garbage, I did get my quirk that day. The girls had ceased being able to verbalize their frustration. Especially after that sludge villain. I think we went back to rivals, instead of him being my bully anymore. Wait, sludge villain? Kendo asked. The realization shone on Yaoyorozu's face, instantly. Bakugo-san was your bully, Momo stated. Kendo looked for an answer, then it dawned on her, he's in the hero course too. Izuku nodded to them both. We should report this to the teachers immediately. No, Izuku's sudden shout stopped both girls who had risen from their seats. Sorry, I mean, Kachin does want to be a hero, it's just he always got told he was the greatest because he has a strong quirk, so he dreams to be the #1 hero. And thinks others have to be stepping stones on his way to get there. I don't want him kicked out of the school, because he might actually learn a few things, and I think a few people here have quirks that are just as strong, so he might mellow out a little once he realizes he isn't top dog anymore. He ran out. So please, unless he goes back to bullying people again, don't report him. It might be the only way for him to be less mean, if not do it for me. Please, he begged them. Taking in his reasoning, it made sense to both of the girls, who sat back down. Fine, but we are keeping an eye on him. So tell us more. You say you got your quirk then? Yeah, when I started it was kind of like my mom's. He reminisced about the early days of practicing his magic. She was so excited that I finally got one. I studied really hard to get good with it, so I can do all those different tricks with it. Spent years practicing. He chuckled, like that one time I nearly drowned. Please tell me you're joking, I don't think either of us could take much more, Momo pleaded. Not joking, but I wasn't in a lot of danger. I just tied myself up and threw myself into the ocean with a microwave strapped to my feet, so I have to escape out of that. Got grounded for a week after that incident. I swear if we didn't see a video of you rushing at a villain who held your childhood bully hostage with no regard, just because you want to be a hero, I wouldn't believe someone could have that much disregard for their own safety. But you Midoriya-kun, you are something else. Kendo wheezed out. Well, it's not much to be honest. After that I just practiced, trained, and helped my mom around the house. Izuku finished his story. I see you both finished your food, I'll go clean up. I think we have about an hour until class starts, so let's make sure we get ready. I hear it's a big surprise event. Both girls agreed. It was best to get away before they heard more of how bad Izuku was treated, before they decided to lock him in a bubble and kill anyone who gets too close to their cute little hero. As they headed to their rooms, so I know we said we would wait, but I've never had anyone be so genuinely concerned for my well-being as him. Even my parents didn't pay much attention. They had maids for that, and from someone who got dealt such a bad hand to still be such a kind and caring person. I don't think I want to wait. I know what I feel. Do you think it's bad of me to want to rush this? Momo asked Itsuka. No, and I hope he meant it when he said he wanted us both. I don't think I can compare to you, smart, strong quirk, beautiful, and to top it off, rich as hell. Otherwise I won't get in your way, Yaoyorozu-chan. Kendo quietly said. Thank you, and I absolutely believe what he said. He isn't going to see it like that. We are two amazing bombshells, and that boy needs some serious TLC. I wanted to ask why he never talked about his father or even mentioned it, but after hearing about how he grew up, I'm scared of the answer. Why? I hope it isn't something like his dad's abuse. No, I think from what he said and how he acts, if his dad even tried to hit his mom, he would do everything to protect her, but he thought he was quirkless until he was 12. I'm well researched on a lot of subjects, and quirkless people don't have it good. Something like 40% of quirkless people commit suicide, and even more are just abandoned into orphanages or just on the streets. I think maybe his father left. I don't want to bring it up in case I'm wrong, or worse if I'm right, I don't want to be the one to make him remember that. I get it now, that's really heavy stuff. For someone so good to go through all of that, it's not fair. He's such a good guy. I really want to support him now, and I kind of don't want to wait either. Endo added, but could we at least wait until the start of next week, get settled in, and see where we are at? It got real emotional, really quick, and I think we need a chance to mellow for a few days because of this. Yeah, I could do that. Makes sense, we just agreed yesterday to wait. Jumping off the bandwagon this soon would be bad if we can't control ourselves for even a week. As the clock approached the time needed for the students to attend test site Gamma, an announcement on the intercom came across the campus. First year hero department, please report to your homeroom to acquire your hero outfits, then proceed to test site Gamma. Before the line cut out, you could hear a bit of a groan in the background. I guess someone forgot to inform us to get out stuff first. Momo posited, as Secret Izuku and herself changed course to head to the classroom. Oh, I can't wait to see what they did for our costumes. Kendo said as she bounced along the path. Barely able to contain her excitement to see her ideas take form into a kick-ass costume. Sharply intaking breath, your tuxedo, she asked, though it came out more like a statement. Yes, Kendo-chan. Izuku responded, and I asked them to improve on it somewhat. Not too big a change from last time. Oh, Momo-chan, you have to see it. Itsuka grabbed her hands. He looked so cute in it. Izuku stumbled as he walked. It's not that cute, he muttered in response. Oh, Izuku-kun, if you're this cute now, Momo fished a response. His blush meant he took the bait. A suit is going to be too much. By now both girls were laughing at the gentle ribbing they were giving him. Since when am I Izuku-kun? He quietly asked. He didn't really care about the answer, he just needed them to switch subjects. But I thought it would be cute. Momo stated matter-of-factly. Itsuka started nodding along with her. Yeah, it is cute. Izuku-kun. As she stuck her face close to Izuku's, a gentle blow lifted his hair off his forehead. The only thing he could do was to hide his face behind his hands to protect his dignity from these two she-devils who existed solely to torture his gently sensibilities. He quickly paced his way into the one classroom, hoping to get away from the girls. He realized that won't work when one of them is in his class, as Momo just followed him inside. A soft grumble at his poor planning left her with a giggle. Can't get away from us that easily. At least not me. She chuckled to him, but we need to get serious, so you can see how we look in our costumes at the test site. I think you're going to like it. As she gave a pronounced bend to pick up her case from the floor and a soft sashay as she exited the classroom. In Izuku's infinite self-awareness to social interactions, he once again missed the glares he was getting from some of the guys in the classroom who had arrived to retrieve their costume. He took his case and walked into the men's locker room. As he began stripping out of his clothes, a few people rounded on him. Dude, you got a spill, how did you get not one, but two hotties already? It's literally been a day. Asked a boy with a lightning bolt in his hair. Yeah, it's totally manly, chirped a red-haired boy. I too would like to know how you are able to form these meaningful relations so quickly, asked Fumikage. As Izuku realized he wasn't in any danger, he proceeded to return to changing into his clothes, unaware there was a hole near his locker. SHHH, they're talking to Izuku. Jiro stated her earplug was stuck in the wall, as the rest of the girls crowded around her. If there was one thing teenage girls like most, it's gossip, and hearing about the mysterious student who was the top student was definitely juicy. Jiro-san. Kendo started. We should get ready, it's not polite to eavesdrop on the boys. The green-haired girl from the dorms added, but Kendo-san, don't you and Yao Yorozu-san want to know if he was doing anything untoward to gain your affection? I would be shocked to learn if a fellow hero in training would do anything untoward a maiden's honor. For some reason a light above her intensified to make it bathe her in a soft glow. After an awkward grin, the girls turned back to Jiro, who shushed them. They're talking again. Look, I didn't do anything, I just introduced myself and started trying to be their friend. Izuku began, the boys crept closer, it's not hard, both Itsuka-chan and Momo-chan are wonderful to talk to, both so driven and intelligent. In the girls' locker room, both the subjects of his praise were blushing, a few girls were awed at how cute and earnest he was. I didn't do anything I wouldn't do to any other girl. You show them you care about them, not their bodies. that you listened to," Izuku continued as he unpacked his costume. "At least that's what my mom taught me." Back with the girls, Hagakure and Ashido swooned until they were interrupted by a shout on the other side of the walls. "Bullshit!" All the guys in the room stopped, not expecting a sudden outburst. A few heads poked into the aisle that Izuku was in. "I saw those two come out of your room this morning," a blonde head proceeded to approach them. Not too hard to get the attention of girls who would just go into a boy's room they just met. What kind of girl does that tell you they are? In the other locker room, most of the girls were fuming. Who the hell was this guy was the only question on their mind. "Dude, not manly," stated Kirishima. "Yeah, cause it's so womanly to just enter a strange boy's dorm on the first day," he replied sarcastically. "I heard a lot of noise coming from your room after they got in there. Couldn't even wait until the night to make moves." I didn't, we did," Izuku stammered. See, he can't even try to deny it properly. As the boy laughed, he had a few scowls from some of the boys, but they were unsure what to do in this situation. "And what was that about your mom teaching you?" Izuku shrank into himself at the comment. He hadn't dealt with verbal bullying in a long time. Kachin only used goading remarks to express his anger. When he would train with Izuku, not having to dodge a punch or kick was different. He didn't know how to fight back against this. Leave my mom out of this," he whined. "Oh, leave your mom alone. You mama's boy." He didn't so much as ask as make it an insult. A soft growling came from the other side of the locker room. The blue-haired boy from earlier approaches. "This is behavior unbecoming of a UA student. Cease immediately, we are going to run late and should not keep our fellow students and faculty waiting on us." The soft chuckle as the boy walked away, getting in one last comment. Maybe he just flashed those abs of his. A few of the easier girls might be impressed by those. As he exited the locker room, Izuku began sniffing and trying to hide his face. "Dude, that was so unmanly," Kirishima started. "I've only seen you like twice, and even I can tell you aren't like that, and I don't think Kendo-san or Yaoyorozu-san are like that either. I'm sorry I didn't do more to make him stop. It's okay, I should have stood up to him. It wasn't right for him to insult Momo-chan or Itsuka-chan. I'm sorry for being too much of a coward to make him stop." Izuku wiped his face. Thankfully he didn't start crying, but his face being as flushed as it was, he felt like he was boiling. "It's okay Midoriya-san," Fumikage added. Since he wasn't getting physical, there wasn't much we could do to force him to stop. At this comment, a purple-haired boy lowered his head. "We should endeavor to make sure the attitudes of our classmates are heroic as our own." Missing a flinch from another boy at the use of a certain word. "I wholeheartedly agree," concluded Ida. "It's important that we have the mindset of heroes if we want to be heroes. So, we should make sure that people like him are properly instructed on how to improve, because punishment without a plan to grow will only stunt someone's growth." A few more comments of agreement from the locker room as the boys headed out. Back in the girls' locker room, a few murmurs about what transpired. "Wow, that guy was a jerk, too bad we didn't get a name, and Jiro is the only one who heard him clearly. Was he someone from your class?" asked a gray-haired girl with baggy eyes. Shaking her head, "No, it didn't sound like anyone in our class. We have one kid who yells a lot, but he's always yelling. This guy wasn't doing much of that." "Oh gross, he's in our class," complained a girl with black hair and soft features. "Whoever this is, we don't want to be associated with him. Some of those other guys seem okay," finished Uraraka. "But it seems right, we should finish up and go meet the others, don't want to be late," Asui concluded. As the students met at Site Gamma, they took in some of the other costumes people were wearing. For most it was simple body armor or a few belts, and nothing major. They weren't sure what would be needed, or some more of the extreme items needed time to finish being made, so most weren't that much more than the standard gym uniform. However, Izuku didn't focus on that. He was too enraptured by two beautiful young women, one in a blue kipao with a black corset, and the other in a red leotard vest with a gold utility belt. Both reveal a fair amount of skin to the looker, leaving little to the imagination. Izuku felt very overdressed in his three-piece midnight black tuxedo. It fit his form excellently and captured his frame in such a manner that you could tell he exercised regularly and was very fit. Moamitsu, I mean, Ayu, that's. As he stuttered and flustered up a compliment. Both girls got the point and proceeded to laugh. "Oh see, Momo-chan. I told you he looked cute." Kendo jeered. "I understand what Itsuka-chan Yaoyorozu means. He does look really cute in his suit and that cape, every hero needs a cape." Izuku just made himself smaller, which elicited more chuckles from his teasers. However, before he could think of a retort, a booming voice rang out. "Haha, we are here." Everyone turned to look at the approaching sound. 4 teachers were approaching, however one stood above them all. All Might, the #1 hero. Along with him were the 2 homeroom teachers, Eraserhead and Vlad King, with the 4th being Midnight. The chatter from the students and questions being thrown out were too much for a proper response. Now children, All Might began. A quick jab from Eraserhead into his ribs however caught his attention. There's no need to shout, it's too early. For everyone else 2 in the afternoon would be right about the perfect time to shout if you ask the opinion of children or All Might, but Eraserhead was a nighttime hero. He did his best work in the dark. Understanding that even being awake is throwing off his sleep schedule, he started over, but with less vigor, but no less enthusiasm. Now children, I cannot answer all your questions. Partly because I couldn't understand when you all start like that, but mostly because it's more important to tell you what we are doing here today. As All Might commanded the space around him. The original plan was for you all to engage in 2-on-2 combat to accurately test how your quirks worked on another human. However, I have been informed that letting you all beat the crap out of each other is not appropriate training. He started putting cue cards into his back pocket. Midnight sniggering in the background. Bunch of soft crybabies must have made that rule. He grumbled, remembering how he was trained to use his quirk. So instead, I will train you in a different manner, a more child-friendly manner. With games, kids love games, so we will be playing a game of capture the flag. He posed heroically as if that was sufficient information. When he realized that his speech did not elicit the correct amount of cheer from his young audience, Vlad King decided to step in. What all muscles here means is that most of you grew up playing games and sports, but not allowed to use any of your natural ability in the spirit of keeping things fair. That, however, as we all know, is total bullcrap. So, you will be broken up into 8 teams of 5, at random. Then each of us will take 2 teams to an area and test Site Gamma, at which you will hide the flag, defend your own, and take the opposing team's flag, or attempt to do so. At this point Midnight stepped up. Now this is an important lesson too. Can anyone highlight reasons why we are doing this activity in this manner, winking at the students? Many of the crowd started shouting out answers. Before she could try to subdue the crowd, however, a yell rang out. Listen up, brats. As a scarf was floating around the head of the one homeroom teacher. If you cannot learn to behave, you will be punished severely. So quietly raise your hands, not your voice. Do I make myself clear? Red glowing eyes stared down all the students, making them flinch under his gaze. Yes sir, came unanimously. Thank you, Izawa-kun, crooned Midnight. Now eeny meeny miny mo, I choose you. She points to a purple head of hair, introduces herself, and then explains why you think there is a lesson to be learned in these games. A deliberate sigh came from the boy as he shuffled his way forward. I am Hitachi Shinsu, I guess because we don't get to pick who or where we are fighting. Almost got the whole thing in one try. She winked at him. Completely unfazed, he returned to his spot in the back of the pack. Now why don't you try to get the rest? Pointing her whip at Todoroki. I am Todoroki Shodo, because we don't get to pick who we work with. Giving the least amount of participation required, he sulked his head as Midnight let out a giggle. It was so close to getting it all, and in so few people. Spotting a familiar head of hair. She sauntered over to our young magician and raised his chin, so he looked into her eyes. How about you, oh wonder child, can you tell little Alemi what the last point is? Sporting a pout and puppy dog eyes. Well, I would have to say, it's important to be able to recognize what quirks are available to you, against you, and prioritize methods to both attack and defend an objective so that we are capable of being used in a more diverse manner than we would previously expect. Since most of us grew up with our quirks, it would be very easy to become close-minded about what your own quirk can do, and a new perspective is required to develop your abilities into, as Izuku rambled. This was clearly a more in-depth answer than was expected of any of the students. The quick push to his shoulder from Bakugo snapped him out of his trance. Nerd, shut up. Kitsuki growled. Sorry, Kachin. Izuku responded. Ahem, well, that was certainly well thought out and completely correct. Good job, Wonder Child. As she winked to him and walked back to the other teachers. Izuku flushed at her tease. Most of the time, unless you work on a hero team, you will be paired up with whomever is in the area. For many small regions that's going to be whoever is in the same agency as you, but for large cities like the ones many of you are familiar with, it's going to be whoever gets there first. And since a certain wonder child caught the attention of the principal, we want to make sure you all don't fall into a single wheelhouse. You'll need to adapt to who is with you more than who is against you. If you can't see how to utilize the quirks of those around you, you might overlook a way to win. She turned it back to All Might to finish the job. Now it's important that you know the rules. It's a game, so don't get too serious. Putting yourself in danger is part of the job of a hero. Being reckless, however, can hurt those around you when you don't want to, so be mindful of how hard you are going. If you get too rough, we will penalize your whole team, so we hope that alone will be enough to dissuade anyone from being more destructive than necessary. All Might stopped his gaze on a few people. Next, you will have 5 minutes to hide your flag. The flag itself must be visible, so you can't just bury it in the dirt somewhere. All Might gets a few chuckles from the students if you get captured by this, as he pulls out bright yellow safety tape. You are out, however, you want to think of that. It's a measure to help you understand, in a nice way, a harsh reality. Some of you won't make it, be it an accident or deliberate measure, bad things happen, the good guy doesn't always go home. The change from his light and jovial language to a somber tone was sudden and gradual at the same time. Everyone understood the weight of those words. This wasn't a game they were playing, it was preparation for the real world when they go out to stop villains, and as they glanced around some realized the people standing around them might not be alive in a few years. Dude, that's a bummer, said Kirishima. Yes, it is a very sobering thought, young Kirishima. All Might responded, his voice picking up in fervor, but that is why this is a game at a school, with teachers. It's just as important to lose as it is to win. If you get captured, I want you to seriously reflect on what led you to get caught, what possible mistakes you might have made, before you think about how the actions of others led you to this situation. Your safety is our priority, but it ultimately rests on your own shoulders. Now lastly, because I'm sure you all want to get started, noticing the eagerness in the eyes of his pupils. You will have 30-minute matches, where 2 groups will enter, and then the remaining groups will sit with us, and we will watch, after which we will discuss what happened together. This got nods of approval from the students as they understood how important it was to learn about the different abilities they would possess. The 2 homeroom teachers approached and took out slips of paper, written on those were the names of the students. We are going to draw out the names of the students, this will give you your teams, after that we will divide you into which teams would face each other. Now All Might, where's the hat? As he noticed his coworker's empty hands. All Might blanched, muttering something about forgetting it in the teacher's lounge. Not wanting to waste any more time, and to get some of the awkward attention off of his hero, Izuku reached out on his own. Here you can just use mine. It's plenty big. As Vlad King reached for the object, a quick blur got to it first. Why thank you Wonder Child, so sweet and helpful. As Midnight twirled it on her finger. The other teachers had a very exasperated look on their faces at her antics. Eraserhead decided to ignore her shenanigans, and instead chose to remain professional. Let's begin drawing names. After about 5 minutes the names were drawn. Izuku tried to figure out who all was on what teams, but everyone was pushed around and grouping up and strategizing. He instead decided to get his head into the game, he wanted to win. So, Mr. Top of the class, how do we win this? Kirishima approached him. Izuku took stock of his team, he noticed that he had Kirishima, Kota, and 2 girls from the 1B course. Well first let's go over our quirks, what can we do? Izuku put the main issue on the table. Kirishima wasted no time, I got a heartening quirk. As he transformed his arms into rock and smacked them together. The loud noise made Kota shrink back. I am Trauma, said the blonde transfer student. I am Pony, it's too weird for people to call me by my last name. I think you mean zebra, not Trauma. Also, it's more like a bull than any equine, said the particularly short girl. I'm Yui Kadai, I have a size quirk, not as strong as Mount Lady, but I can double or halve my size. Turning to the last person who had not introduced themselves, Kota held up a signboard. I'm Kota, and I can talk to animals. Understanding that it is his turn, my name is Izuku Midoriya, I'm a magician. Kirishima let out a chuckle, that Izuku stood by that introduction. As the team made its way to get its flag, he noticed who the opposing team would be. Bakugo, Uraraka, Aoyama, and 2 people who must have been from the 1B course. At this point they were given 5 minutes to enter from the opposite side of the arena to hide their flag. It wasn't a large area, maybe a few hundred meters in any direction, would take more than 30 minutes to scour the entire field on your own, with a team it was doable. So I know Kachin's quirk, Explosion, almost as good as he does. He'll also just want to go straight to a fight. Uraraka-san can make objects float, Aoyama-san can shoot a laser, what about the other 2? A girl with vines for hair, and a boy with a skull face. Izuku asked the 2 people from the other course. Well Shiozaki-san can control her hair, it's pretty strong. She trailed off, Pony taking over. Hananuki-kun, he can make anything flaccid. The rest of the group suddenly turned as red as Kirishima's hair. Kadai knew she had to clear this up quickly. Soft, she means soft. Sweetie, turning to Pony, we need to work on synonyms with you. Turning back to the others. His quirk can soften the ground into quicksand. To be honest, I'm not feeling too hot. None of our quirks are made for combat, and pretty much all of them are. Literally shrinking smaller at the perceived crushing defeat. Oh man, she's right. Kirishima dropped his hands in exasperation. Doesn't matter that we got the 1 person to beat a teacher, we can't do anything to win against that if we can't attack anything. As the feelings of his teammates continued to drop, they were turned off by a disturbing sound. Turning they realized at the last minute Izuku was doing nothing but muttering. Kota was the one to place a hand on Midoriya's shoulder, getting his attention. Do you have a plan? Read out his chalkboard. Yeah, I actually do. Crazy as it sounds, we have more offensive capability than they do. Izuku let a devious smile come to play on his face. Who wants to win this? A joyous cheer rang out as the team huddled up to Izuku. They knew he would lead them to victory. After the 5 minutes had finished, a harsh bell rang out, signaling the start of the event. Last chance, man, you sure about this? Kirishima asked as he finished hammering the flag into the ceiling. Absolutely, I know Kacchan, he's going to force a fight. The others won't want to just attack us, they don't seem bloodthirsty enough, we'll capitalize on them wanting to avoid conflict. Izuku chuckled, using his kerchief to tie it around the room, disguising the flag among a few hundred different pieces of cloth. Not to doubt, since you are really the only person with actual experience, but how do we beat them, since none of our quirks are destructive? At Izuku's laugh, the others look at him. It's why we'll win, if you think they are destructive, so will they. Izuku finished tying off the kerchiefs. Because of that, they might actually believe Kacchan's gung-ho attitude and try a frontal assault. He's pretty convincing that way. So we'll use that to our advantage. As Izuku then began pulling rabbits out of his hat, "Here Kota-san, you'll need these," as he handed over a half-dozen rabbits, then shifting his cape to release a flock of doves. As Kota then used his quirk to gain control of the various animals. Everyone else stared at him wide-eyed. Alright everyone, as Izuku walked towards the door leading outside of the building they chose as base, it's showtime. Kicking open the door and stepping out, Izuku instinctively ducked under Katsuki's right hook, grabbing him by the wrist and throwing him further down the road. So Kacchan, come here often. Smirking as he sees Bakugo pick himself up off the floor. Oh, you shitty nerd, I'm going to get you for that. He growled out as the rest of Izuku's team exited the building. Actually dude, you're gonna have to get me for that, as Kirishima tackled him back into the ground. The rest of Izuku's team ran off together, quickly scanning the buildings for possible signs to where they put the flag. Knowing how fast Kacchan got here, it had only been a minute, Izuku muttered, his team shouldn't be too far from us. Izuku began scanning the buildings. The crescendo of explosions as they left Kirishima to deal with Bakugo resonated in the background. Does anyone see anything that would indicate where they might be stationed at? Kota grabbed Izuku before he stepped off the alley they were running in. Pointing up to the birds, he wrote on his board. The birds see them in the building on our left. Erasing the board to write more, rabbits say that Hananuki-san and Shiozaki-san are on the ground floor. That makes sense, their quirks work best when they don't have to worry about causing structural damage to their base. Izuku stopped outside the door. That's a good strategy Kota-san, using the animal senses to gather information. Kota blushed at the compliments. So we have 2 targets whose main abilities are suppression. He turned to face the door. Okay, when I burst in you 3 get up the stairs and find that flag, then get it to Pony, she's the fastest, and to get it out of the arena, that's how we win. Midoriya-san, Kodai quietly interrupted, but how will the 3 of us get past them with only you fighting? I am glad you asked, for my next trick, I need you to shrink down and put on my hat. He placed the hat on her head. As she shrunk down the hat engulfed her and fell to the floor with a faint plop. Here Pony, you will need to get this as close to their flag as possible. Wide-eyed Pony took the hat with shaking hands, looking inside he could not see Kodai-san. So now, only 2 of you have to get past them, which is easy since the source of a magician's power is their ability to distract. He squared up to the door. On my signal, run for the stairs. Picking in the door, a burst of brightly colored smoke filled the frame, a shadow standing in the doorway, and if you were quick enough you could see 2 other shadows rush past, and out of sight. Step right up, boys and girls. Be amazed as I, Izuku Midoriya, the world's greatest magician, perform feats of wonder, sights to dazzle, and tricks to confound and befuddle the mind. As Izuku strode into the room, hands held high. Both his targets too caught off guard by the sudden and quite flashy entrance of their opponent. So, his gigantic smile quickly shifted into a predatory grin. Who wants to volunteer? Back with Kirishima, under the unrelenting onslaught by Bakugo, he was left with his own thoughts. Dude, this guy is no joke, I can't even throw a punch under this barrage. It's insane he can put out this much power. So, he managed to choke out, trying not to inhale the smoke from the explosions glancing off his heart and body. I'm Kirishima, and you're Kacchan, right? Don't call me that shitty hair. He barked out a retort. Oh, but Midoriya-san calls you that. He laughed. It's so cute, compared to how you act. This only caused Bakugo to increase the intensity of his blasts. Would think he was talking about a little girl. Come on, take the bait, if I can get him to slip up, I can counter, and go on the offensive. The only response from Bakugo however, was a growl, and a large flash, stun grenade. Blinded Kirishima puts his guard up to protect from a frontal assault. However, Bakugo had another plan, using his quirk to propel himself over Kirishima. A quick blast to the back of his head as he completed the rotation sent the red-haired boy to the ground. A groan from Kirishima as he tries to get up. Bakugo, instead of putting him out of his misery, places the capture tape on him. "Dude," Kirishima wheezes out. That was super manly, hearing only a response of you two as Bakugo ran back to the building they put their flag in. Despite having two quirks designed for suppression, neither Hananuki-san nor Shiozaki-san were able to pin him down. At first, when they regained their senses, she grabbed him in her vines, but for some reason he had been able to simply fall out of them. Hananuki wasn't faring much better. He tried to get him to sink into the quicksand, but each time it seemed like Midoriya could walk on water. Wow, those are some pretty impressive quirks. Izuku complimented his foes, and you two have such good control over them. It's such a shame you didn't think to work as a team. Brain, no, do not give advice to the enemy team while you are fighting them. Wait until later. As Izuku dodged another set of vines. I mean, think about it, if you spread out your vines in his quicksand, you could make a very effective field of suppression, get grabbed by a vine, and get dragged in, or get caught in the sand, and be too slow to dodge the vines. As the two 1B students looked at him, as if he had grown a second head. Why are you telling us this? Asked Hananuki. As noble as it is to provide assistance to your classmates, said Shiozaki, even I would not consider doing so while I was combating them. There would be no point in telling you after we win, as he flipped over a set of vines. Then you might feel bad about not thinking of it sooner, so I hope that doing so now might get you in the mindset of working together. He weaved in between the pools of softened earth. If I can help someone I should, regardless of where or when it is, that's what being a hero is about. His declaration caused them to freeze. Taking advantage of their pause, he pushed Shiozaki-san into Hananuki-san, causing them to fall onto each other. And maybe I feel like that still wouldn't be enough. Why am I antagonizing them? So why not give it a try and see what happens? The devilish grin on his face as he leans against a support beam. Despite his comments being cocky, both of his opponents got up and had a gleam in their eyes. They were ready to try harder and wanted to win. Don't get too big-headed, arrogance is often mistaken as skill. Shiozaki said as she spread her vines around the room. Vine forest, dozens of vines broke through the floor, creating a sea of green that would whip and grab in almost random directions. Yeah, it's your funeral if you get sunk because of this. Hananuki placed his hands on the ground again. Concrete swamp as the entire floor turns into a bog. Izuku began his act of dancing through the vines until one managed to grab him, at which point he pulled his foot down into the ground and the rest of the vines converged on his location. As he had been buried up to his shoulders, he could only begin laughing. Excellent work, you two. I knew you could do it. His praise confuses them. At this time though, the rest of my team should be making their escape. His comment caused the two of them to realize they had spent a good few minutes just distracted by him as they rushed upstairs, leaving him on the floor. Up above them were nothing but screams. Uraraka couldn't focus on floating herself too well with the doves constantly pecking at her and dive-bombing the young lady. Aoyama kept trying to shoot his beam at Kota and Pony, but the rabbits kept jumping at him and he didn't want to blast any of them with his laser. As Pony ducked and weaved her way through the room towards the flag, she realized that the floor was too clear of debris and looked up just as Uraraka dropped everything on top of her. Caught under the weight of the object, she quickly tossed ahead so that it landed next to the flag. It lay still. Once Hananuki and Shiozaki got up the stairs, it was quick work for them to catch Kota. So we got them all. Uraraka cheered. Pony and Kota had capture tape placed on them. Ooey, they fell under our combined might. As the team cheers were suddenly cut out by a primal yell. Get back here, I'll kill you. However, that was nothing compared to the slow clapping that came from the pile of boxes. Well done. What a wonderful show. Everyone's eyes turned to see a green-haired boy wearing a tuxedo. He lifted his arm and poured some sand from his wrist. I must say, quicksand is nothing like that slime villain, however it doesn't smell or taste nearly as bad. A series of explosions as Bakugo bounded up the stairs. Growling, Bakugo slowly trotted his way to Izuku. It's 5-on-1, preparing to die. Izuku could only chuckle as he hopped off of the boxes and casually strolled up to Bakugo. Why should I when we are going to win in 3? Counting down on his fingers. 2. Eyes wide as they tried to figure out his bravado. 1. An alarm rang out. Over the intercom a voice cheered. Round over, Wonder Team wins. Midnight, not caring to be impartial. Bakugo in turn grabbed Izuku by the collar. How, is all he could snarl. Izuku calmly walked over and picked up his hat. Reaching into it, he pulled back and Kodia came along with it. Thank you, my lovely assistant, I could not have done a better performance without you. Or any of you, as he gestured to the teams, placing a small kiss on the back of Kodai's hand. But how did you do that? Uraraka asked. I will explain everything when we get back to the rest of our classmates. Izuku, twirling his hat, strolled down the steps and out the door. Is he here yet, sweetie? A shout came from down the hall. Not yet, Mom, I'll let you know when to come out, was the shouted reply. Izuku knew this day would come. He had tried to prepare for it for years, but it's never the same when it's a reality. He had to seriously step up his game. This was one of the most important nights of his life. The rapping on the door broke him out of his thoughts. Coming as he got up, moving quickly to the door, he knew what to expect, who to expect. He knew their every strength and weakness, how he would need to act and react to this confrontation. Opening it, he saw his target. Standing off to the side, motioning, please come in, she'll be right out. Let's wait in the living room, sensei. Tugging at his collar, a bead of sweat formed on his forehead. Is that really necessary, young Midoriya? I could just start before being cut off. Wait in the living room, what an excellent idea. Let me take your coat, don't want you to sweat too much. He pulled his teacher, his idol, into his apartment. Any other time, he would be ecstatic, but not tonight. Tonight he was the enemy. He had to be watched, any slip up, and All Might would meet his doom. All Might, the number one hero, the symbol of peace, had to now impress his harshest critic, his number one fan and student. The boy of the woman he intends to take on a date tonight. As they move into the living room, Izuku waves him to sit on the couch as he takes the chair opposite. He had moved the furniture to help emphasize the point he intends to make tonight. As he sits down, the advanced interrogation techniques kick in. First he just stares, waiting for his prey to succumb to his nerves. On any other night he is All Might and could stare down villains towering over buildings, monsters that shake the very souls of mortal men. Tonight he is Toshinori Yagi, and he is terrified of a scrawny 15-year-old boy. So he coughs, is Inko ready? Trying to find something to start a conversation with. I see, you're already on a first-name basis, then, Izuku coldly asked. His target needed to squirm, he had to prove himself. He couldn't answer the question, that was weakness, he had to ask them, and get answers, that was the most important thing, well, the second most important. When did that happen? Not used to this type of confrontation, Yagi tried to slide back into his normal dialogue with the young man across from him. Young Midoriya, I don't see how that's important. He tried to happily banter with his proclaimed protege, not noticing the glare from Izuku. We're going to have a lovely time. Oh, you are you? Izuku couldn't back down, this was his mother after all. Where are you taking her then? He inquired. Too expensive, and it will seem like he's trying to buy her, too cheap, and he doesn't respect her enough. We were going to go dancing. Inko loves dancing, as he laid out his plans for the evening. Not to a nightclub though. He quickly corrected it. Something about the way he was being watched, it made him feel small, like he was being analyzed by a professional. He couldn't slip up, he didn't want to know what would happen then. Then we would go to a restaurant, somewhere Italian. He waited for Izuku to nod, showing that he either approved, or at least didn't disapprove. Yes, Italian is her favorite. Izuku unfolded his legs and leaned forward. So how are you going to get there? I notice your suit is more form-fitting, so I hope you don't expect to jump your way across town. She doesn't like heights. Izuku waited for a flinch, finding none. Of course not. All Might began sweating, wondering if the AC was turned off, or if he was really this nervous. He shouldn't be, he was All Might, but then again he's never had to speak to anyone like this before. I got us a taxi. Oh, do you expect to not be able to drive? Izuku pulled at this thread. Planning to do some drinking, maybe loosen her up. This was a harsh question, he had to know. Her safety was paramount. Yagi sputtered at this, no, we won't, unless she wants to, but then. He stammered out. Unsure how to answer this correctly. I will not touch a drop, she is free to have as much as she wants, I will maintain control the entire time. He prayed this was enough. I expect control, he nearly growled this out, she's not a heavy drinker, so if you might be all it takes, I expect you to be a gentleman. He placed his hands on his knees and took a needed breath of air, because if you are not, he added darkly, they will never find your body. At this Yagi shuddered before he could do anything, let alone say anything. Ms. Midoriya entered. Oh, Izuku, stop teasing him, that's my job. She walked over and placed her hand on her son's head, ruffling his hair. But thank you for looking out for me, my big strong man, she crooned at her baby boy. Mom, I have to be sure. He whined, trying his best to recapture the intensity he had previously displayed. Oh sweetie, it's just Yagi. She walked over and took her date's hand, pulling from the couch where he had been trapped before. We are just going to dance and have some food, nothing more. As she grabbed her coat. I still have to make sure he's not going to do anything. he rounded, following the pair to the door. At this she was in a fit of laughter. "Honey, we are both adults, we know what we are doing." Izuku had to keep going. "I just need to be sure he's good enough." Inko's eyebrows perked up. "Good enough for what, sweetie?" she giggled. Izuku blushed and looked down. "For you," he whispered. "You're all I have, you're my mom, and you only deserve the best." Turning to him, she pulled him into a hug. "Oh sweetie, that means so much that you would look out for me like that. I promise to be responsible, and don't worry, I know how to keep a man in line." She winked at him, taking Toshinori by the arm and leading him out the door. "Don't stay up too late, I know you have school in the morning." As the door closed, Izuku moved to the window to watch them climb into the taxi and take off. Once they turned the corner, he placed a radio in his ear. "Mama Bird is on the move, are all pieces in place?" As he moved back to his room to grab his surveillance gear, specially made for underground heroes. "Copy hat trick, speed freak in pursuit, maintaining cover, over." Came over the line. "Second that chemistry and ghost at Point Alpha, awaiting arrival. Over." "Floater and Big Bang on standby, over." "Copy, hat trick moving to provide extraction should the operation go sideways. Over." At the end of the buzzer, the students who were captured started pulling themselves up, and everyone began making their way to the exit, and the participants were discussing amongst each other what they thought of the exercise. When they reached the remaining groups and teachers back at the staging area, the group was bombarded with questions. "Okay students, let's back off and begin the review, that should answer most of the questions anyway," commented Blood King as he tried to calm down a bunch of excited teenagers. "First, we will begin to discuss the important topic, how did Wonder Team," he sarcastically said, "win the exercise? Izuku, if you would, explain how you got the flag out," he requested. It was something everyone except All Might seemed to be questioning. Well, as Izuku tried to start, then he suddenly realized everyone was focused on him, shrinking back a little. "I put Kadai-san into the crowd," he whispered out. "I've been able to disappear myself for a while now, so I figured I could disappear her as well, and sort of put her out of the area, so she could reach through the hat and take the flag." As the students pondered and tried to figure out what his quirk was, their thoughts were interrupted by a raucous laughter. "Wahaha, just like the microwave, young Midoriya!" All Might burst out. In one place, and out the other. He moved over to Izuku to pat him on the back. As the rest of the class looked at Izuku, as if he had just grown a second, third, and fourth head, those who were listening to his story at the entrance exam remembered him saying he was trained by a pro. "Now before we start the next group, it's important to reflect on our actions, and what didn't work, and what did so, what are some ways any of you might have improved?" asked Aizawa. As was mentioned earlier, learning from a failure is just as important as succeeding. We will begin with Hananuki-san, picking a student at random. "What could you have done better?" "Well, it's a bit embarrassing, but I should have learned to work with my team better. Midoriya-san saw us for about a minute or so, and already could tell we weren't working together nor to our fullest potential. It's kind of disheartening that after having my quirk for so long I never thought to try to use it in conjunction with other quirks." As he tapered off his response, a few people started thinking of how their quirks can be used with other quirks to make them stronger. "That's a good response, and since you worked with Shiozaki-san, we'll go to her next," Aizawa continued. This group seemed to be less likely to disappoint him, he wouldn't admit that, but still they had potential. "Hananuki-san was right, I never considered ways that my quirk can be used to supplement the powers of others, so our teamwork was not great. It was really admirable that Midoriya-san would be so willing to share advice on how to improve ourselves, even if he was competing against us." Shiozaki finished the thought that Hananuki started. As the rest of the students commented on their own thoughts for the exercise, one overarching theme was apparent: they needed to get better at working together. The remaining groups began thinking of how to work together, so as the other three games went, the teams got more and more in sync with each other and started trying maneuvers that didn't always work, but it got them experimenting. At the end of the class, it didn't matter which teams won anymore, it was about how fun it was to use their quirks with people who they hoped in a few years to call friends. "Well students, I hope you learned the important lesson we were trying to teach you," All Might stated with much vigor, "so next time when you get paired off, it becomes second nature to assess the quirks you have available to create a winning strategy. Now run along and enjoy the rest of your day. For those of you in the dorms, it will be a good time to finish setting up your rooms." As the students filtered out, with All Might waving them off, he was suddenly cornered by the three other instructors. "Seriously All Might, what is that kid?" inquired Aizawa. "At the very least he doesn't have a traditional quirk." "Yeah, he's a nice kid, but do you really expect us to believe the explanation that he's magic?" scoffed Midnight. All Might shut the door and after making sure they were alone, exhaled and shifted to his natural state. That's what he's always said. When I first met him, the way he described his quirk, it reminded me of someone from my past, someone very dangerous. The serious tone he was taking with his colleagues caused them to shudder. Anyone All Might would consider very dangerous is not someone they wanted to tangle with. That's why I started training him. He was already very powerful, naturally inquisitive with the world, and a bit headstrong. He seems like a good kid, hasn't given me reason to suspect him of anything, but there was always a but. They were pros, they knew this. I did some digging into the family history. Mother works as a grocer, met her on a few occasions, nothing out of the ordinary. He let out a sigh. The father, however, is an entirely different story. I was told by Mrs. Midoriya that he was just working abroad. That topic gets avoided if I ever bring it up with Izuku. I tried using some contacts to track him down, bank deposits, company names. Came back with nothing. A monthly deposit from child services shows it looks like child support, but working that backwards gets me nothing. It's shell company after shell company. All Might gives a moment to let the information settle. Nedzu-san has been helping me sift through some of this, but it keeps leading to dead ends, abandoned warehouses, and office buildings that haven't been used since pre-quirk days. This guy is a ghost. All I have is the name Hisashi Midoriya, which, to be honest, concerns me. It seems like his name is a joke. It's been a while since I last saw you. I just hope I'm overcomplicating things, and the dad is just at worst a deadbeat. Otherwise he begins to trail off. The world is going to go through some very tough times. Despite how well the day's class went, there came a separate problem: dinner. As the residents of the dorms started to remember, the school was only providing breakfast and lunch for them. This led to a few discussions on what that even meant. Mostly about if they even knew how to cook, or if microwave dinners would suffice. The discussions were starting to get a bit louder as they each tried to roll into one another, until a loud thumping noise broke through and caused them all to stop. "Thank you, Jiro-san," said Yaoyorozu. "Now I think we all have a general idea of what the discussions we've been having are all about." Noticing nods around the room, however, that is just a smaller part of a much bigger problem we will be facing. As more people started to settle in around her, patiently waiting to hear her suggestion. "We are a bunch of teenagers together in one, albeit large, house. For the foreseeable future, we are going to be living aside one another, so we need to develop some rules or else this won't work." After an hour of discussion, they created a fair way to divide up the weekly chores and daily tasks. The next morning everyone had mostly settled in at the dorms, and the general classes weren't too different from what they were doing at their middle schools, except these classes were much more advanced. To be the top school in the country, they couldn't just produce the best heroes. They also had to produce the best minds. This led to a few of the students who were already struggling in the classes. It was agreed upon that study groups would be necessary to maintain good grades, since if they did not perform well academically they could be removed from the hero course as well. After lunch they were instructed by their homeroom teachers to head to the gymnasium for the rescue portion of their class. So a few of the students who made it into the hero course using that category were excited to see what they would be doing. Since their homeroom teachers mentioned not to take their hero costumes, this raised a few eyebrows from the students. When the students all entered they noticed that they did not have All Might, Midnight or either of their homeroom teachers. Instead it was the school nurse, Recovery Girl, 13, and Ectoplasm. They were each standing around dummies on the ground and had different sized and shaped red bags marked with white crosses. As the students began to mill about, Recovery Girl spoke up, "May I please have everyone's attention?" The chatter died down and everyone focused on the short geriatric. "Thank you. Today is the first of many lessons that I consider more important than what you will learn from that meathead, because this course is to teach you something very important. Principal Nedzu calls this the rescue course, which is an apt name." She toddled over to a dummy and bag, her cane clacking on the wooden floor as she went. It is very easy to forget that after the punches are done being thrown and the last of the rubble falls, there are still people that need help, and as heroes you will be trained to help. As she stood next to the first dummy, she continued her speech. "Principal Nedzu was right to show you that video on the first day. There were too many heroes and not enough heroics. Just because they thought they couldn't do anything to stop the villain doesn't mean there wasn't work for them to be doing. In today's lesson with me, you are going to learn CPR and what you can expect to find in different emergency kits. Please spread out to groups and then we will begin the lesson." It was roughly an hour and a half later when the students moved on to the second part of the lesson. "Now, we can go over the different types of emergency kits." As she gestured to the different bags. Each of these has an increasing number of items in them. It is not expected of many heroes to carry something like this, as she poked a large duffel bag with a D-size oxygen cylinder sticking out. Since that would be carried by emergency services. However, as she shuffled to the smaller bags, these were simple first aid kits that you could pick up at local stores, and you would know how to use something like this to do simple field dressings. So as the students each got one of the small bags, Ectoplasm created a few copies of himself that went around and allowed the students to patch him up. After learning how to properly apply a tourniquet and different dressings, Recovery Girl stepped aside so 13 could lead the next half of the class. Thank you for that very informative and hands-on lesson, Recovery Girl. I see there are more students who have taken an interest in learning more about this portion of being a hero, said the slightly digitized voice of the space-themed hero. I am 13, I cover a different part of the rescue course, I specialize in search and rescue. As a result, a lot of what Recovery Girl will teach you, I put into practice on a regular basis. As she moved around the room, her lecture continued. What I must deal with is something that many people may not remember, the debris left behind after a catastrophe, an accident. Noticing a few confused looks, she knew what they wanted to ask. Yes, it may sound strange, but much of my job is actually not cleaning up after heroes. With UA and the other hero schools turning out better trained and educated heroes, property damage from fights with criminals is down quite a bit over the last decade, but things like earthquakes, flood or other accidents, those can happen all the time or can be very predictable. So what I want to cover is less hands-on for now, but I want to show you some videos of different types of disasters so you may begin to familiarize yourselves with them, because a flood and a fire have very different and some very similar threats to yourself and those around you. The rest of the class was spent seeing how some situations can be more threatening than people realize. As the class broke off with the boarded students heading to the dorm, conversations about the day's lessons started, and not just about the hero course. As some of the students paired off to form study groups. The group assigned to prepare the night's dinner, which consisted of Midoriya, Tokoyami, and Kirishima, got to talking about the last few days' events. Kirishima trailed, trying to begin a conversation. Can we talk about the whole All Might knowing you thing? While chopping up onions for the stew. Oh that, Izuku mumbled nonchalantly. It's not a big deal, just sorta happened, you know. No actually, I don't, Kirishima retorted. How does one just casually know the number one hero? If it is related to the story you told after the written exam, that would explain many unusual things, Tokoyami added, while stirring in the carrots and potatoes. However, that doesn't explain the whys. What do you mean the whys? Izuku asked, doing his best not to make eye contact. He could never lie if someone was looking at him straight on. He was busy adding salt and pepper to the cooking beef chunks. The smell of simmering vegetables was wafting about the kitchen. Isn't it about time to add the time? We have already added all the necessary spice, Midoriya-san, so please do not avoid the question, or at least, do a better job of it. Tokoyami dryly stated. What I mean by this is, why did All Might choose to train you? Even if there is much experience to learn, your quirk is significantly different to his own. He should know others with a closer related quirk to your own to provide more focused training. As the pot began boiling, Kirishima moved to close the door to the kitchen. There, now it's just the three of us. Kirishima leaned on the wall and faced the other two occupants. Dude, if you don't want to tell us what your quirk is, I can get that. It might be one of those, if you know what it is, you know how to beat it deals, but if you got an inside with one of the top pros, you need to be honest, because if you aren't his side, a lot of people are going to start questioning how you got here, and if you can't explain that, you're going to have some problems with people trusting you. Izuku could only let out the breath he was holding. You're right, All Might and we have it's kinda, it's complicated. Everything I told people about the slime villain and getting trained by a pro, it's true though. I just kept a few secrets, since they aren't mine, I can't tell anyone. Do you understand? Putting the meat in the pot, setting it to simmer, and then wiping his hands on a towel. Yes, it is understandable to hold a secret for someone else, but once it gets out, as all secrets do, where will that leave you, the holder of the secret? Tokoyami added ominously, glancing at Kirishima. I'm not sure how much I can tell you, but I'll try. All Might is a new part of my life, so is all of this. As he stirred the pot. What do you mean by all of this? The school, the structure, the people? Kirishima questioned. The quirks. Izuku answered. At this comment both Tokoyami and Kirishima tilted their heads. I guess I should explain a bit, huh? Seeing his two peers nodding, he knew he would have to explain. Might want to get comfortable then, Izuku gestured to the boys. Seeing as they complied, he started his story. I'm not like you guys, everyone else out there, he motioned to the common room, and they grew up with a quirk, I grew up around them. I got mine when I was 12. So your quirk triggered when you were 12? Asked Kirishima. Izuku shook his head at this. No, I mean, I got my quirk when I was 12, I didn't have one. 100% certified, quirkless. Kirishima, and Tokoyami's eyes widened. How, that doesn't, you can't just. The bird-headed boy's demeanor and mannerisms failing under the information that drastically clashed with the current understanding of the world. Yeah, it's not as crazy as it sounds. Izuku continued. Okay, so it is, but I guess it's. Okay, this might be tougher to get. For as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a hero. You know, tie a blanket around my neck and pretend to be the number one. The boys nodded. That was common behavior for kids. They all wanted to be a hero, so they all used to do that when they were younger. Then I turned 4 and waited. He paused and waited. Then I turned 5 and I still didn't have my amazing power, the one that would let me be a hero, let me help and save people. So my parents took me to the quirk specialist. That maybe mine was a mutation and we just needed to find the right trigger for it. He began chuckling. I didn't have one. At this, Izuku began a full-blown fit of laughter. Concerned, Kirishima moved closer to Izuku, but the freckled boy just put up his hand and tapered off his raucous giggles. It's funny really. That point was what changed so much in my life. I lost all my friends, my self-esteem, and even my dad. Just because I didn't have what everyone else did. He wiped a tear from his eye. Now both boys were concerned but didn't know what to do. How does one help someone having an emotional breakdown and an existential crisis at the same time? And I just didn't give up. Everyone took pity on the poor quirkless kid, even my mom. He hopped up on the countertop. I started researching ways people have quirks. Watching heroes and villains duke it out to analyze their abilities. Got really good at it too. I'll show you my notes sometime. I even got some of our classmates. Seeing the looks of discomfort on their faces, he clarified. Not in a creepy way of course, but remember how I told Hananuki-san and Shiozaki-san how to better work together, stuff like that. It's more like a practical application of a quirk doctor. This let the boys relax as they didn't need to worry about their classmate being a deranged stalker as much. So, I kept looking and I found some interesting information. I can't say what I found or where I found it, but it led me somewhere and I got my own powers. Then a few years later I met All Might. It was weird circumstances, but it's kind of cool too. I know things about him and he knows things about me. Because of that I can't tell those secrets, but you're right Tokoyami-san, there would be other pros better suited to help me learn, but for some reason he kept me aside, trained me specifically. Izuku got off the counter and moved the pot off the stove to let the stew cool down. I don't want people to think I got in because of him. He helped me, but in a way so did everyone who pitied me, bullied me or just ignored me. That drove me to want to be a hero, and I learned not to give up, so even if All Might's and my paths never crossed, I think I would still have ended up here, or at least still doing this. Both boys were shocked at the revelation, but amazed at the resolution the small boy had. They couldn't comprehend what it would be like to not have a quirk and to struggle with how everyone treated him, only to still turn into the outstanding young man who is currently top of their class. That's quite impressive, chirped Tokoyami. Kirishima could only shake his head. Impressive, dude, Kirishima stuttered. That's phenomenal, amazing, it's so manly. You gotta tell us more. Kirishima was practically begging for Izuku to keep talking. It's really not, I just never quit, never really knew how. As he moved about the kitchen, Izuku was pulling out silverware and bowls for the stew. Cranking the oven to a high temperature, he placed a long loaf of bread, seasoned with herbs and butter, and time went on. Then I got my power. Had to read my book a lot. Book? Queried Tokoyami. What do you mean by book? Yeah, is it a really advanced quirk textbook? Kirishima guessed. Maybe has some obscure knowledge on quirks that make sense of your quirk. Or is it more like an owner's manual, and the hospital forgot to pack it when you were born? He laughed out loud. That's actually a really good guess for Kirishima-san. Izuku chuckled. Put them together, and it's close to what it is, but also kind of not. The only other person, besides my mom, and the person I got it from, who knows about it, is Kachin, but to be fair he just wants to take it and destroy it. What? That's preposterous, a book that provides incredible knowledge that was able to teach you how to use your quirk to such a professional level, Tokoyami squawked out. To want to destroy such a thing is inconceivable. Well, it's not like he wanted to burn it because of the information, Izuku added. Honestly, he didn't know what it was or what was in it, he just didn't want me to have it. Wow dude, this Kachin sounds like a real jerk. Kirishima stated he didn't like bullies and that Kachin sounded like a bully. Also, Kachin sounded familiar to him. Tokoyami shared the sentiment by nodding his head. Like I told Momo-chan and Itsuka-chan, unknowingly switching to first names for the two girls, he told part of his history too. He's changed quite a bit already. The book was more of a goal for him to work towards. If he could get it, that meant he beat me. So for about 3 years I did everything I could to keep it safe. Izuku turned to the oven to turn it off so the bread could finish baking. think of it as an arms race. I learned new tricks to keep it safe, and he developed new techniques to try to get it. He actually helped train me faster than All Might did, believe it or not. Now the two boys were incredulous, a schoolyard bully, a better teacher than the #1 professional hero. What are you guys looking at me like that for? Do you think this boy, who was your tormentor, was a more effective means of making your quirk more powerful than the private, one-on-one, secret training you received from the greatest hero of our generation? Tokoyami asked quietly, barely able to comprehend how his understanding of the world changed so drastically in just a few days, solely because of the actions and words of one, albeit incredible, boy. Well yeah, when I first got my quirk, I could do no more than simple levitation, then I got a few small tricks down, but Kachin, he really pushed me. I got lucky the first time he tried to blow it up, the teacher walked in, and I knew I couldn't learn at my own pace. I had to learn at a hero's pace, one that Kachin always held himself to. For the next few years it was always him escalating, and me defending. Izuku pulled a loaf of bread from the oven, nothing like fresh bread, to sop up the last remaining stew in the bowl. Then I started training with All Might, Izuku moving to the next part of his story. This part interested both boys immensely, the secrets of personal training with a symbol of peace. It was definitely different. He had me clean the Dagaba Municipal Park beach of all the garbage that washes up on the shore. He began chuckling again. Well, not all of it, some of that stuff was a bit too heavy to move on my own, getting sidetracked. Izuku coughed, clearing his throat. So for 10 months I worked cleaning the beach and practicing my tricks, but I really only developed a couple of new ones. After about the last year I haven't even opened another lid on my trunk. Both of the boys listening were having the same thought, what does he mean trunk? So that's how I know I progressed more with Kachin than I did with All Might. Concluding his tale, he began serving up bowls of the stew. Oh, Bakugo-san, Kirishima suddenly blurted out, that's who you mean by Kachin. Was going to go crazy if I couldn't get that. Seriously, I fought the guy just yesterday, how could I forget that? Wait, a member of this school, Tokoyami inquired, as or was your childhood bully/rival? Oh, now don't you start that too. Izuku chided. I already had this discussion with Itsuka-chan and Momo-chan. Being here is good for him, and I really think it will help him change his ways for the better, so don't go reporting his and my past to the teachers, unless he goes back to bullying people. He's just brash, not a villain. Both boys could agree that what happened was between Bakugo and Midoriya, so they decided to let the two of them handle it themselves, unless it spilled over to becoming everyone else's problem. As three boys walked out of the kitchen with the many bowls on serving platters, two of them realized their time at this school was going to be very different than they had imagined. Thanks for watching this video. Part 3 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the playlist that I have created and enjoy. Link is in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.